Hello, everyone. Thanks again for attending today's webinar. We're excited to have you all with us today and hope that you enjoy the content we have to present. And with that, let's just go ahead and get started. I'm really pleased to be here today and talk to you guys about HarvestMaster's new product called Casma. Let's see here. My name's Doug Moore. I'm the product manager for the Casma Yield Monitor system. And you know, we've been working on this for several seasons in research mode and playing with it, and just are really excited to bring this product to the market and to introduce it to everybody to help growers be more successful in the work they're doing. Just a little bit about HarvestMaster. We were founded in 1993 and have a really strong reputation in the actually the ag research industry. So we do on-combine weigh systems, which is basically yield monitors for combines in the research space for seed researchers. And we are the industry leader there and have been for some time, and have been providing really outstanding measurement for years and years to those folks. And in addition to that, we actually did have a yield monitor system for commercial root crops in the late 90s and through the early 2000s. We did stop selling that product. Honestly, I think we were just a little ahead of our time. At the time, the term precision ag hadn't even been coined yet. So we were a little early, but we're really excited to be back in this space and providing a great product to growers. Let's talk a little bit about the name Casma. People always want to know where we got the name. Just for fun, the Casma Valley is in Peru, and it is where potatoes were first cultivated you know, in an agricultural way. So rather than just naturally growing, that's where farming of potatoes began. Okay, I want to start this webinar really by jumping into benefits. We're going to show you how this system works and explain some of those things, but I want you to understand what our goals are right out of the chute. And so first off, we have this increased farm profitability, which is probably the goal of almost every product you guys see in your space, but clearly that's really important to us as well. We really want to help you identify areas in your fields that are underperforming or that are performing better than average, so that you can see and analyze what's happening there and try to maximize the yields that you get out of your fields. You know, the way we do that is by giving you a visualization of harvest performance. A heat map gives you that ability to see detailed information about every area on your field and how it's performing. This information can be used in a lot of ways, and we'll jump into that in more detail as we go along. Also, we provide a lot of reports to help farmers be more optimized in their in what they're doing. So data is collected from the harvester that tells information that's also helpful, like, for example, truckload information, time that you're idle versus active, those kinds of things are also available. And those reports are easily accessible from the MyCasma website, which we'll show a little bit of later. And the last thing I would love to mention is just that HarvestMaster has a great reputation for outstanding customer support. And with Casma, you're definitely going to get that as well. We just take really good care of people to make sure that, that people have the results that they want and the support that they need. I want to start by kind of showing the end product in mind. So this is a field in southern Idaho. This is a yield map that came out of Casma, and I want to talk about several things that we can see here that I think showcase some of the ways that these yield maps can be utilized. So the first thing that I want to show you, if you'll notice where my mouse is moving, you can see that there's kind of a harsh line right here of a transition area where we have really heavy yields over here and light yields here. And then again, it drops off here and stays about the same all the way over till here. We have another one of those harsh lines where yield is stronger on this side than it is on this side. What we're seeing there, this is a place where the grower, this is sweet potatoes in this, or excuse me, sugar beets in this instance. We're seeing areas where the grower decided to try different seed varieties. So this here was a different variety, as well as over here was a different variety. And so we can see a very clear and obvious line where the grower can see for sure that this seed does in fact outperform this seed. So that's hugely beneficial to the grower. There's some other things that we can see on this field. Right up here, we see kind of a disturbance and some changes. Well, they had just opened up a little bit of new ground in this area and had kind of been spreading it around and working it, and this is the area where all those changes happen. And so paying extra close attention to the results of opening up that new ground can also be beneficial. Now, there's one other area that I want to show you here, and that's this line here, where we have another kind of pretty stark change from what's happening on this side to what's happening on this side. And this one had us scratching our heads for a bit. We weren't really sure what was happening here, but the grower had been mapping some other bits of data, and he was looking at those maps and noticed that on his planter, he had higher down pressure on this area and then made a change to a lower pressure. He was following recommendations, and those recommendations didn't end up paying out for him. In this instance, the heavier pressure had resulted in better yields. It's kind of amazing to think about that decision that he made right at the beginning of the season of just changing that down pressure had an impact on his yields. And so those are the kinds of bits of data and information that a grower can gain from looking at and analyzing yield maps. I want to share this quote. Our Casma yield monitors have allowed us to compare different fertility practices, chemical applications and rates, seed sources, etc. in real time, backed up with data instead of just opinion. It's a valuable tool that should be in every farmer's toolbox. That quote comes from a grower up in the Moses Lake area who has been testing our system and just showcases really what we're talking about, that these yield maps are hugely beneficial to helping you really measure the results of things that you're trying to improve your yields. And so having a good measurement of yield is so critical to really knowing if the things you're trying, if the experiments you're doing are actually benefiting you and helping you increase the profitability of your farm. Okay, let's jump into the system a little bit and just talk about some of the key components and how they all work together. Up in the top right side of the screen, you'll see two load cells. So we load cells, and a measurement of weight is actually kind of at the heart of the system. And so we're measuring that weight so that we can, obviously, so we can measure yield. In addition to that, you'll see the next sensor kind of up above there, just right in the center is there's a tone wheel and a speed sensor. Those are used to calculate the speed of the belt. We need to know how fast that belt is traveling as the potatoes or whatever crop is crossing over that belt so that we can accurately calculate yields. Now if you go to the sensor that's clear down on the bottom screen on the right side, you'll see what we call the run hold sensor. This is basically a way for us to know if the digger blades are down or up, and so are we harvesting or not harvesting. You know, honestly, it's a big on-off switch for capturing yield data, but it is helpful for us. Okay, then if we go to the top on the left side, you'll see a GPS sensor sitting up there. Obviously, if we're going to put this data on a map, we need a GPS receiver to do that. All of those sensors are wired into what you see right in the middle of the screen called the central control unit. And so that central control unit is where all the data is stored and where all the communication happens as well. So all those sensors come in, and then you can see we have this line coming out of that box headed to the tractor cab. And then from there, we connect to an ISO bus display. Ah, my mouse is back, hooray. So here's our ISO bus display, and the system with Casma directly connects to your existing display. So you don't have to put a new screen in your cab. There's nothing that needs to clutter up space in excess of what you already have. You're just going to, it uses either the universal terminal or the virtual terminal in your existing display. So that's a really nice feature that makes it convenient for farmers. And that's where you're going to set most of your settings and see a lot of the data live as you're harvesting. Now, in addition to that, in that central control unit is a cellular modem. And so every few minutes, cellular data transmission occurs and sends that data to the cloud where it is added to our MyCasma website. And so near real time, you're able to see updates to yield maps from virtually anywhere. Let's go to some images that show us exactly what some of these installations, this hardware looks installed. So here we see an example of a load cell that's installed on a double L harvester. You can see here that we've installed the load cell actually on the outside of the conveyor wall, and then we basically put a hole in that wall so we can put that through and mount the idler wheel inside, and that's where the weight is actually taken. And so this protects that load cell and keeps it from being damaged in any way. Here we have our belt speed sensor. And so what you have is basically this tone wheel that's spinning. And as it's spinning, we're able to count those teeth and use that along with some other settings that we'll show you in a minute to very accurately calculate the belt speed. Next, we have a digger switch. This is just a proximity sensor that is looking for metal in front of it. And so we just set that sensor so that when there is metal in front of that sensor, we know that the digger blades are up and we are not harvesting. Next, GPS. So, you know, as many of you know, GPS has become a mainstay in agriculture. Many of us are using GPS receivers for steering of our tractors or even our implements as well. And in many instances, we can tie into those existing GPS receivers. If for whatever reason we can't, or you do not have a GPS receiver, HarvestMaster makes it available to you to buy the Geo GPS receiver. Here we can see that central control unit mounted. This is on a Pluger harvester. And you can see there's lots of dust and debris building up on this as it's being used. This box is sealed to those kinds of things, and so it does great in that environment, and you can see kind of the guts inside where the data is stored and all the communication is taking place. Here's a connection to an external cellular modem antenna, so that's what that's there for. All right, I want to start spending a little bit of time looking at the interface that you'll have in the cab for the operator. So this is the home screen on that universal terminal or virtual terminal on your cab display. And what you're seeing here is, first of all, the current yield. So that current yield is basically updating all the time as you're harvesting, so you can see live kind of what yield is happening on the fly as you're going. As you continue to harvest through the field, that field average begins to become more and more accurate, obviously, the longer you're harvesting, and it updates all the time, but it is the average for that entire field. And it stays that way until you click this new field button, which you would do once you start in a new field. That resets this field average. It also resets some other stuff that I'll show you here just in a minute on a field summary screen. Okay, also, one of the things that we can do while we're harvesting is we can capture truckload data. So this button here is for that new load. This shows the weights that are accumulating, and then we enter in a truck ID. So basically how you use this is as you start filling a truck, you enter in a truck ID, usually some sort of number, but sometimes something else. You can put that in there. And then as the load is filled, you'll see this filling up, and you can monitor how much weight is being put into the truck. Once the truck is full, you're going to click this new load button, and what happens is the amount of weight we've measured for that truck, along with that truck ID, is stored away into our data logger and then transferred up to the MyCasma website. But at that point, it also clears the counter, starts it back at 0, clears your truck ID, so you can put in a new truck ID, and you begin the whole process again. One thing about this truckload thing, I just want to share this quote we got from a user this summer. He says, "I would say that the Casma user interface in the tractor is very simple and easy to use. A really nice feature is the ability for the operator to track every truck's weight as he is loading. It allows the operator to get every truck fully loaded without overloading them. That helps in eliminate unloading issues back at the farm as well." So there's a lot of benefits of this truckload data. You know, certainly some people have trouble unloading trucks that are overloaded. We've had other customers that have dealt with challenges with law enforcement for having trucks that are too heavy out on highways. And so those are some of the benefits of measuring those truckloads and getting them right. Okay, additional things on this screen. Right here, this is a pretty critical section. This is where we set the number of rows we're currently harvesting. You can either push the plus or minus button to change those on the fly, or you can actually click on the number and just type that in. And just to help you understand what that number should represent, if I was harvesting with 2 6-row windrowers and a 4-row harvester, I would take those 2 6-row windrowers, so that's 12 rows. I would add the 4-row harvester for a total of 16 rows. And so we would have 16 rows entered in. So it represents not only the rows that the harvester is harvesting, but any rows that windrowers are also adding, so that we are capturing all the potatoes that are crossing that weigh system and correctly applying them to the area that they came from. Okay. Here we have a weight calibration button where you can go in and calibrate the system. That doesn't have to happen too often, but it's there for easy access. And then down in the corner, you will have any kind of errors or alerts that may come up to keep you aware of what's happening in the system. Okay, let's talk about a couple of the settings really quickly so you're just familiar with the system. So row spacing is a critical one. You notice that we're asking you to tell us how many rows you're harvesting. We can multiply that by your row spacing, and that's how we're able to calculate the area that we are harvesting. Lag time is the amount of time it takes from the crop to leave the ground to go through the harvester and reach our load cells. So that's a critical thing so that we can put the yield data we're capturing on the right place in the field. Belt pitch is just obviously the pitch on belted chain. Sprocket teeth is for that drive sprocket on that same conveyor belt, and we need to know the number of those teeth. We use that along with this pulses per rev number, and that's how we're able to calculate belt speed. Pulses per rev is the number of teeth on that tone wheel for the speed sensor. And if you're using our tone wheel, that's 6. Occasionally, we'll see people use existing tone wheels that may have more teeth, and so that's why that's changeable. And then the angle is just the angle in degrees of the belt where you're taking the weight measurement. Okay, so that was kind of setting screen 1. Here's setting screen 2. These load cell numbers here, you're not going to worry about those almost ever, so you don't need to worry too much about that. Here we select our yield units where we can choose tons per acre, 100 weights per acre, or if we're in metric, we can use some metric measurements as well. And then here we're telling the system where the GPS receiver is in relation to the center of the harvester digger blades, right where the potatoes are coming out of the ground. And so we can click on this and change it from left to right. This can go forward to back, and then you're putting in inches if you're in English units. If it's in metric, then I believe it's in millimeters. Or centimeters, excuse me. You're gonna put in the number of the distance for the GPS offset. And then in addition to that, we also put in the UTC offset, which is basically your time zone information, so that all of the time stamps are correct when you get on the website. Okay. Last screen I want to show you for this user interface is what we call the field summary, which is just a nice place for us to show you some data that's being captured while you're harvesting. So the first thing we get is a total weight, and obviously as you continue to harvest, that continues to go up, and so you'll eventually be able to see the total weight harvested for an entire field. Area harvest tells you how far along you are in that process, and then your field average here is just what the average yield has been on the field thus far. Loads is the number of truckloads that you've done, and then you've got runtime and idle time. And all of that just continues to go up. Oh, sorry about that. All of those continue to go up until we click this new field button, which is the same as that new field button you saw on the home screen. So you can push it either place and it will clear all these and start recounting all of this data. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the data. So as a reminder, as we're harvesting, this data every few minutes is being sent up via cell modem to this MyCasma website. So as a grower, you're able to come in, enter in your username and password, and go ahead and log in. And from there, we're able to start looking at yield maps. So here's an example of a yield map. You have some tools here that I just want to go over quickly that allows you to filter. So we can select kind of a time stamp, a period of time that we want to look for that yield data. So we set that area, and then we can come in here and select which harvesters we want to see data from. So, this is an example where we had 5 harvesters all working together in the same field. So we want to select all 5 harvesters. And then in addition to that, down here is a list of fields. Right now, someone's typed in Pat to sort or to search the field list to find all fields that say Pat. And so there's Pat 13. In addition to obviously the yield map that you're seeing, you have control over all of the colors and the amounts of the yield values that would turn it to a specific color. So all of those are adjustable by you. In addition to the yield map, I mentioned that we capture some additional data. So here's an example of some of the reports that we provide. Here's just some data on harvester data. And so we're going to put in, again, some filtering abilities. What time range do we want to look at? And then we can search for specific fields. So in this example, we're using a field called Gilmore 1. And on Gilmore 1, here is the data for Harvester 1 and Harvester 2 that were both used on that field. And the total weight that was harvested, the area that was harvested, the average yields for that harvester, the number of truckloads they loaded, runtime and idle time. And so it's just nice to have access to that data. In addition to that, we also have data about fields. So here, instead of again, we can filter by time, then we can select which harvesters we're using, select a field, you can select multiple fields or just one, and then here you have the data. So here's the name of that field, area harvested, the total weight, the average yield for that field, the number of truckloads, and then the total runtime and idle time for every harvester that was on that field. Here we have truck data. So we can also say, okay, let's filter by time, let's select which fields we want to look at, and then let's look at trucks. So in this example, truck number 13 had 5 loads. The average load on that truck was 298 hundredweight. And here we can see the total amount of weight that was loaded onto that truck on that field. So those are some of the data fields and things that are available to you. This stuff can be exported through shapefiles or KML for the yield maps and through Excel for this type of data for analysis in other tools if you'd like. We are mounting this equipment on a whole variety of harvesters. Here you can see several different types of harvesters that we've mounted this stuff on. So, you know, we have double L's, we have Spudnik, we have Pluger, and I just forgot the name of this sugar beet harvester. Oh, an Amity, excuse me, Amity sugar beet harvester as well. So we can mount this equipment on a wide variety of harvesters. If you have a harvester in mind that you'd like to load this on, please let us know and we can take a look at that harvester and help you decide if the system is compatible with your harvester. I want to talk just for a little bit about accuracy. So this is a really nice way of showcasing how accurate the system is. And basically what we have here is we're looking at scale weights and we're comparing them to the weight that we've captured on truckloads. And so here you can see this 135, 79, et cetera, is truckloads, okay? So in this particular bit of data, we're looking at 51 different truckloads, and we're looking at the blue line is the weight that was captured at the scale house, and the orange line is the weight that we captured with my Casma, and you can see how accurately we were able to track and follow that data. So we're really happy with the accuracy that we're seeing. In addition to that, here's another way of looking at that accuracy more by percentage in a different example. So in this example, we have 101 truckloads. That data was captured over 5 days. And we did have 3 loads in that 101 truckloads that were off by more than 5%. Those numbers respectively were 5.9%, 5.2%, and 5.0%. There's a couple things that could have caused that. Sometimes we have errors that occur just due to problems with empty weight versus full weight, and sometimes, you know, potatoes fall off or different things like that. So there are different things that can happen, but occasionally we are off a little bit. But the average error of all of those loads was 0.3%. So we're really pretty proud of the accuracy we're getting. And a lot of that accuracy comes down to lots of details, paying attention to lots of little things that can have a big impact on the measurement. For example, inside the central control unit, we have what's called an accelerometer, which basically measures any kind of vibration or tilt in any direction, and we use that data to adjust the measurement on the load cells so that we know that the weight is accurate in spite of those vibrations and pitch changes. Okay, I just want to come back to this map just to remind you quickly of what we talked about in the beginning, that the whole point of all of this is to help farmers make good decisions about how they're managing their fields. And in this example where we're seeing clear evidence that a specific variety of seed makes a big difference and that changing down pressure, as an example, can make a big difference, these are the kinds of insights that make this system so valuable to growers. When you really know what happened when you harvested, when you really know the yield information, it gives you the ability to make intelligent decisions about how to manage your farm. Okay, now I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. We have just a couple minutes, so I'll try to be quick, try to keep to our promise of being done in 30 minutes. So first question that came up, how precise is the weight measured on the harvest loaded on the truck with this system compared to the real weight on the weighbridge? So I think you saw some of that data. We are claiming based on the numerous bits of data we have that we are plus or minus 5% in virtually in almost all situations. But as you can see, the accuracy is sometimes well in excess of that. Okay, other questions. Does the system have an annual fee? Yeah, let me answer that. The answer to that question is yes, there is an annual fee. The reason for that is that we take care of all of the details for you in terms of that cellular data transmission. So you're not having to go and find a compatible SIM card with a carrier and make all of that work and then pay another bill for that cell signal. We just take care of that for you. So when the box arrives, it already has a provisioned cell modem in there with the SIM card and ready to roll. And we take care of all of those details. And then obviously we're also storing all of that data for you on the MyCasma website and making that available. Okay, another question. How does the system handle tear? Okay, and by tear, I'm assuming you're meaning dirt and rocks that build up, sometimes crossing the belt. So that's a great question, one that we get a lot. Currently, the system does not do anything to adjust for that information. We're well aware that that's a challenge that we would like to overcome, and it's something that we're looking at closely and considering all kinds of options for how best to solve that problem. But as of today, we do not solve that problem. So basically, the weight that you get from the system or the yield data you get may be compromised if there's lots of rocks and mud in the crossing that belt. Let's see, how long is the wait before the data is available? Okay, so as a reminder, we're sending up that data usually every few minutes. The only thing that can change that is if we come outside of cell modem range, which does happen from time to time, but the data logger that we're using to capture all of this information can store an entire year's worth of harvest data if necessary. And so it just stores that data in a buffer, and as soon as it has a cell signal, it sends that data up. But as long as we're in cell service, that data goes up just every few minutes and is available for you, fully finished. The yield maps, all of the reports, everything's there for you. Okay, I think we're going to call that good on questions because I want to keep to finishing by 11:30. So I just want to thank everybody for your attendance. If I didn't get all of your questions answered, which I know I didn't, there's a few extras in here for sure. So we will get back with you with those answers in the next couple of days. But thank you again for attending, and please feel free to contact us and ask anything else you'd like to. We'd love to talk. Thanks.